Redeemer Lutheran Church in Lake City, Florida. Welcome particularly to Friday Night Bible Bites. This is what we do every Friday. 6:30 we have a fellowship meal. 7 o'clock we come together in prayer, and then around 7:15 we start up the stream and we begin our study. My name is Kellen Bartley. I am an elder here at Our Redeemer Lutheran Church in Lake City, Florida, and I extend your welcome, first of all, to this stream, but if you're in the area, we really urge you to come and join us on a Sunday or even on a Friday night. We thank you for joining us. We encourage you to participate in the chat box. We welcome greetings. And if you have any prayer requests, we welcome those also. If you have a prayer request that you don't necessarily want everybody seeing in the chat, you can send it to us in a private message and we will pray for you off the air. So now we are, this year we've been studying the Gospel of Mark in a topical fashion. So each session is centered around a theme that's addressed in the book of Mark, and we compare and contrast with the other Gospels, relevant places in the Old Testament, prophets, and the law, as well as the epistle writings. So we had a couple of introductory sessions. We talked about the parables of Jesus. We talked about the miracles of Jesus recorded in the Gospels. We talked about the two great commandments that were really reiterated by Jesus because they had already been given and expounded upon in the whole book of the law. But those two great commandments that he answered when asked were to love the Lord your God with all of your heart, mind, soul, and strength, and to love your neighbor as yourself. We talked about Jesus as a prophet without honor, and the oppression and the opposition that he faced, especially in his hometown, but really everywhere he went. He had the Pharisees, the scribes, and the scholars of the law going around after him, trying to tear him down and trying to pull people away from Jesus because their hearts were hardened to the truth. We just finished a session talking about the cross and the kingdom, and specifically in terms of Jesus's predictions of his own passion, his arrest, capture, trial before the Sanhedrin, trial before Herod, trial before Pilate, the beatings, the disrespect, the humiliation, the spitting, ultimately his death, and after that, of course, his resurrection, which we celebrate. Now, this week, today, we are going to talk about the last days as addressed by Jesus in the Gospel of Mark, the 11th, 12th, and 13th chapters. So here we'll read the introduction to the session. We will then read the passages from Scripture, and then we'll get into a little discussion. And we welcome your discussion. We welcome your questions. The more relevant they are to the subject, the better, but we might take a little aside here and there. But without further ado, let us begin approaching this study. What's in store for our world? What do the decades ahead hold for humankind? Throughout history, in all civilizations, people have asked questions about the future. In Mark, the disciples, the crowds, and the religious leaders of the day also have questions about the future. What's in store for Jerusalem, the holy city? What do the decades ahead hold for the Jewish people? What will happen at the end of time when history draws to a close and God brings about his final judgment? Through his words and his actions, Jesus answered these questions in part. As the Son of God, Jesus could easily have given complete answers, more details than mortal human beings could even want or be able to hear and understand. But in humbling himself, Jesus voluntarily refrained from using his divine power and knowledge fully and constantly. He accepted the Father's plan to reveal only certain truths about the future, and he was willing to focus on the critical work at hand, the redemption of the world. Yet, what Jesus does teach is important. As he approaches the end of his earthly ministry, he gives his disciples a glimpse into the unfolding of the divine plan. Now, we'll go ahead and read the relevant passages for this session. Like I said, there's going to be Gospel of Mark, chapters 11, 12, and 13. We'll start with chapter 11, verses 12 through 25. The Gospel of Mark, chapter 11, verses 12 through 25. And if you have this edition of the Bible, it's going to be on page 848. 847. Chapter 11, 12 through 25. On the following day, when they came from Bethany, he was hungry. And seeing in the distance a fig tree in leaf, he went to see if he could find anything on it. When he came to it, he found nothing but leaves, for it was not the season for figs. And he said to it, "May no one ever eat fruit from you again." And his disciples heard it. And they came to Jerusalem, and he entered the temple, and began to drive out those who sold and those who bought in the temple. And he overturned the tables of the money changers and the seats of those who sold pigeons. And he would not allow anyone to carry anything through the temple. And he was teaching them and saying to them, "Is it not written, 'My house shall be called a house of prayer for all the nations'? But you have made it a den of robbers." And the chief priests and the scribes heard it, and were seeking a way to destroy him, for they feared him, because all the crowd was astonished at his teaching. And when evening came, they went out of the city. As they passed by in the morning, they saw the fig tree withered away to its roots. And Peter remembered and said to him, "Rabbi, look, the fig tree that you cursed has withered." And Jesus answered them, "Have faith in God. Truly I say to you, whoever says to this mountain, 'Be taken up and thrown into the sea,' and does not doubt in his heart, but believes that what he says will come to pass, it will be done for him. Therefore I tell you, whatever you ask in prayer, believe that you have received it, and it will be yours. And whenever you stand praying, forgive if you have anything against anyone, so that your Father also, who is in heaven, may forgive you your trespasses." Our next passage is going to be chapter 12, verse 1 through 12. And he began to speak to them in parables. A man planted a vineyard and put a fence around it, and dug a pit for the winepress, and built a tower, and leased it to tenants, and went into another country. When the season came, he sent a servant to the tenants to get from them some of the fruit of the vineyard. And they took him, and beat him, and sent him away empty-handed. Again he sent them another servant, and they struck him on the head, and treated him shamefully. And he sent another, and him they killed. and so with many others. Some they beat, and some they killed. He had still one other, a beloved son. Finally he sent him to them, saying, They will respect my son. But those tenants said to one another, This is the heir. Come, let us kill him, and the inheritance will be ours. And they took him and killed him, and threw him out of the vineyard. What will the owner of the vineyard do? He will come to destroy the tenants and give the vineyard to others. Have you not read this scripture? The stone that the builders rejected has become the cornerstone. This was the Lord's doing, and it is marvelous in our eyes. And they were seeking to arrest him, but feared the people, for they perceived that he had told the parable against them. So they left him and went away. Our last reading for tonight is chapter 13, verse 1, all the way through 37. That's the entirety of chapter 13. And as he came out of the temple, one of his disciples said to him, Look, teacher, what wonderful stones and what wonderful buildings. And Jesus said to him, Do you see these great buildings? There will not be left here one stone upon another that will not be thrown down. And as he sat on the Mount of Olives opposite the temple, Peter and James and John and Andrew asked him privately, Tell us, when will these things be? And what will be the sign when all these things are about to be accomplished? And Jesus began to say to them, See that no one leads you astray. Many will come in my name, saying, I am he, and they will lead many astray. And when you hear of wars and rumors of wars, do not be alarmed. This must take place, but the end is not yet. For nation will rise against nation, and kingdom against kingdom. There will be earthquakes in various places, there will be famines. These are but the beginning of the birth pains. But be on your guard, for they will deliver you over to councils, and you will be beaten in synagogues, and you will stand before governors and kings for my sake, to bear witness before them. And the gospel must first be proclaimed to all nations. And when they bring you to trial and deliver you over, do not be anxious beforehand what you are to say, but say whatever is given you in that hour, for it is not you who speak, but the Holy Spirit. And brother will deliver brother over to death, and the father his child, and children will rise against parents and have them put to death. And you will be hated by all for my name's sake, but the one who endures to the end will be saved. But when you see the abomination of desolation standing where he ought not to be, let the reader understand. Then let those who are in Judea flee to the mountains. Let the one who is on the housetop not go down, nor enter his house to take anything out. And let the one who is in the field not turn back to take his cloak. And alas, for women who are pregnant, and for those who are nursing infants in those days. Pray that it may not happen in winter. For in those days there will be such tribulation as has not been from the beginning of the creation that God created, until now, and never will be. And if the Lord had not cut short the days, no human being would be saved. But for the sake of the elect, whom he chose, he shortened the days. And then if anyone says to you, Look, here is the Christ, or Look, there he is, do not believe it. For false Christs and false prophets will arise, and perform signs and wonders to lead astray, if possible, the elect. But be on guard. I have told you all things beforehand. But in those days, after that tribulation, the sun will be darkened, and the moon will not give its light, and the stars will be falling from heaven, and the powers in the heavens will be shaken. And then they will see the Son of Man coming in clouds with great power and glory. And then he will send out the angels and gather his elect from the four winds, from the ends of the earth to the ends of heaven. From the fig tree, learn its lesson. As soon as its branch becomes tender and puts out its leaves, you know that summer is near. So also, when you see these things taking place, you know that he is near, at the very gates. Truly I say to you, this generation will not pass away until all these things take place. Heaven and earth will pass away, but my words will not pass away. But concerning that day or that hour, no one knows, not even the angels in heaven, nor the Son, but only the Father. Be on guard, keep awake, for you do not know when the time will come. It is like a man going on a journey, when he leaves home and puts his servants in charge, each with his work, and commands the doorkeeper to stay awake. Therefore stay awake, for you do not know when the master of the house will come, in the evening, or at midnight, or when the rooster crows, or in the morning, lest he come suddenly and find you asleep. And what I say to you, I say to all, stay awake. This is the word of the Lord. Thanks be to God. All right. So, in these readings, look carefully at the section headings in your Bible. If your Bible does not include headings and subheadings, how would you summarize these texts?
Lessons for the future.
Right, they're all lessons focused on the future. From the fig tree to the doorkeeper. They're asking him questions about the future. What's going to happen? What is the end going to be like? It's kind of a reasonable thing. If you've got God himself in your midst, having conversations with you, they're asking questions that only God would know the answer to. And he tells them kind of what to expect. The things that must first take place. But then ultimately, there's not going to be an exact time or an exact hour or an exact date. It's going to be in the future. We know now it's going to be fairly far in the future by man's reckoning, but we also know that a day to us is like 1,000 years to God, and 1,000 years is as a day. So it's going to happen in God's time, and we know that this is the final state of God's relationship with man. The Messiah has come. There's not going to be any more Messiahs. There's going to be plenty of false Messiahs claiming to be Son of God. But Jesus here is warning us, don't listen, don't believe him. If somebody says, I am he, or come, he is here, don't believe him. Yeah, very good. So, the message in brief. In each of these episodes, Jesus reveals the truth about God's plan for the future. First and foremost in God's plan is the cross. The Father's Son goes willingly, obediently, to die for the sins of the world. But Jesus also teaches, through a prophetic sign and a parable, the fate of the temple and Jerusalem. In a private moment with Peter, James, John, and Andrew, Jesus teaches about the conditions before and during the devastating war with Rome, and before his final triumphant return in glory to judge the world. All right, moving ahead and working with the text. The fig tree, the temple, and the vineyard. So let's real quick reread Mark 11, 12 through 25. And I'll go a little bit faster this time. But just to review, Mark 11, verses 12 through 25.
That's the first one we did.
That's the first one we did. So to review, on the following day, when they came from Bethany, he was hungry, and seeing in the distance a fig tree in leaf, he went to see if he could find anything on it. When he came to it, he found nothing but leaves, for it was not the season for figs. And he said to it, "May no one ever eat fruit from you again." And his disciples heard it. And they came to Jerusalem, and he entered the temple and began to drive out those who sold and those who bought in the temple. And he overturned the tables of the money changers and the seats of those who sold pigeons. And he would not allow anyone to carry anything through the temple. And he was teaching them and saying to them, "Is it not written, 'My house shall be called a house of prayer for all the nations'? But you have made it a den of robbers." And the chief priests and the scribes heard it, and were seeking a way to destroy him, for they feared him, because all the crowd was astonished at his teaching. And when evening came, they went out of the city. As they passed by in the morning, they saw the fig tree withered away to its roots. And Peter remembered and said to him, "Rabbi, look, the fig tree that you cursed has withered." And Jesus answered them, "Have faith in God. Truly I say to you, whoever says to this mountain, 'Be taken up and thrown into the sea,' and does not doubt in his heart, but believes that what he says will come to pass, it will be done for him. Therefore I tell you, whatever you ask in prayer, believe that you have received it, and it will be yours. And whenever you stand praying, forgive if you have anything against anyone, so that your Father also, who is in heaven, may forgive you your trespasses." So, after spending the night in Bethany, a village only a few miles from Jerusalem, Jesus and his disciples journeyed toward the capital city. Travelers often enjoyed the fruit of trees as they walked along the main road. Though still some distance away, what does Jesus notice about the fig tree?
It had leaves.
Yeah, so back in verse 13 it says, he saw a fig tree in leaf, and he went to see if he could find anything on it. And then what does he discover? Discover is in quotation marks because God has perfect knowledge. But what does he discover as he comes to the tree?
Wasn't in season.
There's no fruit, right? There's no fruit because it wasn't in season. And he would have known it wasn't in season. But he's kind of acting out this moment as a teaching moment for his disciples, right? So he says, look, this tree has no fruit. And in what way does the tree seem to be living, but is really dead? That's a good question. So it's alive, it's in leaf, it's green and may offer some shade, but it doesn't bear fruit. It's not in season. Now,
It's showing life but no fruit.
right, life but no fruit. It sounds like something you might read about in the Epistle of James, right? Faith that bears no work. Faith without works is dead, right? Though it appears to have life, it doesn't have anything to give, anything to offer. Does Jesus' curse on the tree seem harsh to you? Think about it.
He's teaching a lesson. And in a way that it's proof. To me it means we have to consider God's time, not ours.
Right, so anything that God does is good. Let's not forget that. And he does things in his own time. He has the power of life and death in his hand. He can give life and take it away at his good pleasure, as he has proven. He created everything, creation, and he also takes away life. There's times in the Old Testament recorded when people were smitten dead. A rebellious sect within the Israelites who were seeking to create their own worship were buried alive in the earth. The earth opened up under God's power and swallowed them and buried them alive to death. There were the boys who were mauled for making fun of the prophet Elijah, for really mocking him. And that's a funny verse, kind of, because if out of context, it really seems way overblown of a response, right? If they're just making fun of a guy's bald head. But when you put it in context, you understand they were comparing him unfavorably to a prophet that had come before him who had long hair, right? He was, so that's another one of those things that, when understood in context, is maybe not as crazy as it sounds at first listen. But, right, so God gives life, God takes away life. If you look at the scoreboard, he's really given about 1 billion times more lives than he's ever taken away. But in terms of cutting short before their natural time. So he has the power of life and death, and he exercises that over this fig tree. And he does it as an illustration of what is to come for Jerusalem, of the temple worship taking place in Jerusalem, of the legalistic, pharisaical, what would eventually become the Talmudic religion of, really just centered around finding loopholes in God's law and trying to outsmart God, which is incredibly futile. It's hard to understand how anybody can ever come to an understanding like that, but that's what it is. It's really grounded in pride. Not to be too judgmental, because all of us, in our own small way, consider ourselves maybe a little bit smarter than what the pastor says sometimes, or maybe we've got it really figured out, and that verse can't possibly mean what it says on its face. It must be figurative, or it must be a later addition to the text, or we try to tell ourselves stories to always be right, and we have a hard time as humans humbling ourselves and allowing the Word of God to correct us instead of the other way around. And that's what Jesus came to do, was be the Word incarnate and correct the hearts of the Hebrew people, and eventually the nations, by extension, by sending out the apostles. Where were we? Does Jesus' curse on the tree seem harsh to you? So, this is an illustration of what's going to happen. He comes to the tree, finds it alive but bearing no fruit. This is an illustration and a smaller version of the story of him coming to earth, and especially coming to the Hebrew people, finding that they are bearing no fruit because they have empty faith. They have faith that's just performative. There's no true heart faith. It's all just keeping traditions, and half the traditions weren't even the ones handed down by God, but the ones that they made up. They built fences around fences, rules on top of rules. And so he comes and he shows them that he's putting a curse on the fig tree in the same way he's putting a curse on false worship, empty worship, fruitless worship of the one true God. Even though they're not worshiping idols, they're not properly worshiping the true God. And Jesus comes and he prophesies the destruction of the temple, and lo and behold, that's what happens. AD 70, the sacking of Jerusalem by the Roman army. It came true. Wouldn't you know it? Okay. Feel like I covered that pretty thoroughly. Any further thoughts before we move on to question 2? Anybody at home? Feel free to chime in. All right. Question 2. In Jerusalem, Jesus goes immediately to the temple. On an average day, the temple courtyard was filled with hundreds of people gathered to offer sacrifices. From the brief description in Mark, how would you picture the scene?
Grand Central Station.
Grand Central Station. Yeah, there's all sorts of stuff going on. People coming and going, carrying loads. Instead of keeping the temple court holy, they're just cutting through as a shortcut. There's people buying and selling, trading, changing money, taking their cut. If you ever travel and you use one of these machines in the airport to get a different currency, because they would only accept commerce in their own currency. So people would come from distant lands with currency from Greece, or what we now call Turkey, what they called Asia at the time, North Africa, Egypt, and they were coming to offer sacrifices, and the people the people selling the sacrificial animals would only accept the local currency. So it wasn't enough that they were selling animals who were, shedding feathers, shedding hair and fur. They're leaving droppings, probably in the temple that's supposed to be holy, sacred, and clean. They're defiling it in the courtyard. They're essentially stealing by crooked dealings, and they're really defiling the temple in a lot of ways, and Jesus doesn't like that. It's hardly reverent. It's hardly reverent. So what abuses would likely have resulted from buying and selling in the temple courtyard? I think
Cheating.
Yeah, possible cheating. Greed, absolutely. Which is a form of theft, right?
I think coveting probably too.
Covetousness, that's a good one. So if the poor could only afford a pigeon and the middle class could afford doves, how do you think they felt? Probably a little bit covetous towards their neighbor who could afford the dove. And how much more so if they could afford a lamb or a goat or a heifer, economic class divisions are on full display here.
Seemed to be just a whole array of selfishness.
Right. And it gets people's minds on materialism, on themselves, on, oh man, am I really good enough? I can only afford a dove. Is God going to accept this sacrifice? Will I have to come back and do it again next year? Will I have to come back and do a bigger one next year? Or, does it even matter at all? Can I just skip it? So yeah, all sorts of things taking place here. And in what ways has the temple become a den of robbers? I think we pretty well covered that. Let's see, how are we on time? Let's do one more question and call it an evening. So the next day, Peter notices that the fig tree has withered from the roots. What impression do you think the withering of the fig tree made on the disciples?
Amazement.
Amazement?
Because Jesus told them not to live.
That's right. So Jesus' word took effect in the span of just one day. One day he curses the tree, the next day they come back, the tree is withered. So this is a microcosm. This is a miniature of Jesus' ministry of prophecy. What he says takes place, comes true, and we can trust it. We can trust his word above all other words. Jesus is the Word incarnate, and we can trust in him above all other words. So what impression? So yeah, they would have been amazed. They would have certainly been talking amongst themselves, what does this mean? Of course, Jesus went on to tell them what it means, but that would have really sparked a lot of conversation, I would think. How does the withered fig tree symbolize what was happening in the temple courts?
It's working against its own purpose.
Is working against its own purpose. Yeah, exactly. In a way, you can think of it like the leaves are kind of ornamental. They're for show. And only the fruit is actually of any value to anybody for nourishment, right? So the corrupted religion of the Hebrews at that time was all for show, but had nothing of substance to offer people's souls. All right, I think we're going to call the lesson there and pick it up again with question 4 next week. Same time, same place, Friday night. Again, the lesson is going to be 7:15, and we'll go out live, but we'll have a fellowship beforehand, as we always do, 6:30. If you're in the area, please come in, please join us. We welcome everybody. Please come and join us on a Sunday, where you can talk to Pastor Fair, who really knows his stuff. I've never been to seminary or anything. I'm just another layman studying with you all. But we do it the similar way. We have a worship service first at 10 o'clock, but then we have our fellowship meal, 11:30. We have prayer, and then we have a Bible study at Sunday, usually right around noon. And he'll record that. And by the way, all of our past live Bible studies can be found, and you can go back and binge watch them to your heart's content. They're on our channel page under the Live tab. There are things under the videos, but they're not the Friday Night Bible Bites.
They're also listed under playlists. The separate ones are Friday Night Bible Bites is listed under playlists, just under.
Oh, good. So we have now also organized our videos into playlists. So it'll make it much easier on you if you're just trying to follow this series or follow the sermon series. They'll be all in a playlist, all in a row. So much easier to navigate. All that said, let us close out together, and unless there's any further comments or questions, concerns, 95 Theses. All right. So let's close out with the Lord's Prayer together. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, and the power, and the glory, forever and ever. Amen. Thank you again. Thanks everybody for joining us here in person and online. We wish you a wonderful rest of your evening and a Saturday, and we hope to see you on Sunday. God bless you all. Good night.